Hi, I just wanted to make a quick video on items as far as the responsiveness. I think a few folks that have been watching the Muse videos, maybe it just wasn't clear. They haven't quite picked up exactly on it. So I started out like I would recommend to most of you with a mobile layout. If you remember Clarissa's video way back in week 2 or 3, she said it's easier to move from an apartment to a house because you have a lot of space, and if you start to create a design that's very, very cluttered on a desktop and then you go to a mobile, that becomes problematic. So I did start at that. You'll notice that we have a breakpoint that's stored, and the breakpoints that I would add are not really based per se upon breakpoints for specific sizes. So I wouldn't add one for instance, an Android phone or an iPhone 10, because you'd be adding all these breakpoints, and it becomes really very tedious and very hard to manage. So really the way that you want to do this is just as the design starts to change. So as I start to scroll to different size designs, where the design changes up, that's where I'm going to add potentially a breakpoint. And it just happens that I added one around 960 here, which coincides with basically a tablet. But really you want to add it anywhere where the design starts to become problematic in some way. So I want to show you a couple other things. If you look very carefully at the graphics that I have, I'm going to dismiss this here. If you look very carefully at the graphics that I have, they're set to resize, and the resize option that it's set for is responsive width and height, meaning as I start to resize this document, the graphic will resize. So it gets bigger, and in order to do that, by the way, you have to be careful. In other words, the graphic should be made for the largest size. So in this case, 960 might be the largest size that I go with. I'm going to add another breakpoint just to kind of show you the process. I'm going to put one here at 1100. Really don't need to, because my design, as far as I'm concerned, isn't changing at all beyond 960, but just to show you the process, I'm going to add that breakpoint there. Then we have a 1240 breakpoint. So as I scale, and again, that was something that's extraneous, didn't really need it. But as I scale, I look for where the design necessitates it. And I have the breakpoint stored at these various points. And if I'm looking at it, as I go from this breakpoint to probably somewhere around here, it becomes problematic. Okay, so here it's the design's great, and as I start to scale this thing, it starts to overprint the character's head here when I move it with any breakpoint that's larger than this. So I need to make a decision. Do I really want to move that that item up, or do I want to sort of play around with where it is at each point? And I don't think I like the way that this looks with it on top of him. So at any point above that breakpoint, I'm going to move this text. So at the 960 breakpoint, I do like the way that this looks. The problem is, as I go, probably, let's see where it is. Where's that point where it kind of encroaches him? Maybe about here, okay? About here, I'm going to add a breakpoint. So I'm not adding my breakpoints based upon existing sizes. Add my breakpoint here. And at that point, when it gets inside this breakpoint area and it starts to overprint his head, I have some decisions to make about this. Do I want to maybe replace this with something that's smaller, or do I want to move it to a different location somewhere on the page? And I think anything within this breakpoint, I'm going to move it back to the place where it is, basically in the 322 breakpoint there for the iPhone. I'm going to move it down. So being at this breakpoint, click this, and I'm going to move it down below Steve still. So it's down there. And I can look at the design. I can see, okay, that's not really, that works, this works, this works, this works. And then I want to switch it over to the top, and that works, and that works, that works, that works, and it continues to work. So really that's the idea of basing your design breakpoints upon where it makes sense. And the only other thing I want to call out or call your attention to is how the way the graphics work at a particular size, if we want to swap them out. So let's say there's something that just doesn't work at all. If let's say the smile, I wanted to change it up. If I right click or control click on mine, you'll see that there's the option, if you scroll down, to hide it in this breakpoint. So I could hide that smile text inside this breakpoint and then replace it with maybe bigger text or smaller text based on what I wanted to do. So I hope that helps some of you dealing with the responsive, because I know that there are some issues. Give it a go. Make sure that you check your designs. Make sure you're adding the breakpoints really where they make sense for the design versus trying to cover every contingency as far as sizes. I'm going to make another video that will accompany this on doing alternate layouts. And that'll be a whole different sort of subject to cover the same type of topic.